I'm going next. P.S. I've decided. Because you fucks didn't tell me not to.
Warning, this podcast contains violence, sexuality, gore, and other horrible and disturbing things. Listener discretion is advised. Also, the hosts of this venture are ignorant dipshits, so please do not take anything they say as fact. And enjoy the show.
Now, are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then we'll begin.
Today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be.
It is our basic human right to be fuck-up.
A second plane now has crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center.
Putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The defendant shall be incarcerated for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole.
You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
We were somewhere around Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold.
Occultae Veritatis.
Hello, and welcome to Occultae Veritatis podcast. My name is Sage Murray, along with
Richard Bigley.
Ood Gallifrey.
I'm the soundboard demon, and I've been told I can make dick jokes this time.
Also special guest.
Yes,
yes. I am Chris.
Just the silent hordes of patrons watching and listening in the darkness. If you would like to be a part of the horde of darkness, patreon.com/ovpod. Join us.
Yes,
I feel like you have to put a harder D on the end of horde, because it just sounded like the horrors of darkness.
Oh no, what a terrible thing to be
Hordes
called.
of Darkness is kind of cool too.
A little from column A, a little from column B. We can have both.
Right.
The two genders.
They are not diametrically opposed ideas.
The two genders, hordes and whores.
Yes,
I imagine that
I did say that you needed to introduce a little D.
You did.
Well, Richard Bigley has something for you.
Yeah, a whole lot of Bigley D. Is that like Sunny D?
Also, there's a spot in hell where all you get is Sunny D.
No, I don't like that.
That's the point. It's
All right,
hell.
so the public universal friend was an American preacher born on the 29th of November, 1752 in Cumberland, Rhode Island to Quaker parents. They were assigned female at birth, but that was not correct. And they had a long and very interesting life. So let's get some poison.
So, what's your poison?
I'm drinking wine.
Oh, we can
Diet Coke.
We can do not water this time.
Yep, not water this time. That was a dirty, dirty lie. I've been drinking since like 1:30, 2? Around there.
I'm still just a sexy incorporeal being, but you know, I think I'm gonna try these all-dressed chips. You Canadians talk about them a lot.
Ugh, I hate all dress.
Best chips ever.
They're delicious.
No,
I also enjoy
Ooh.
ketchup. Ketchup's also a good flavor. And mesquite barbecue, like the kettle cooked stuff, those are fucking bang on.
Then you'll really like it because, fun fact, ketchup chips are the only chips in hell.
Hell yeah.
I like ketchup. Yeah, I'm okay with that, but no all dressed. All dressed chips and original Doritos. Original Doritos taste like how sweaty feet smell.
I'm smoking Tweed generic sativa, and for those of you that don't know Canadian weed brands, that's pretty much like no-name weed. It's still working. It appears to be working still, even though it's no-name weed. So I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10.
Is it literally called generic sativa?
It's. I'm not sure if the word is generic, but like it's something like that. It's like standard sativa or generic sativa or something like that.
Does it come in like the fluorescent yellow package with just bright, bold letters says weed on the side?
No name weed in like Helvetica font.
Exactly.
A dream of mine. So I will give my Bucks wine a 10 out of 10 because it's good.
Danish aquavit.
Aquavit, okay.
And I'll probably give it like an 8, I guess.
What is aquavit?
Aquavit is a Norwegian distilled spirit produced in Scandinavia, distilled from grain and potatoes, flavored with a variety of herbs. Very popular in Germany.
Yeah, listen to the demon.
The demon is very intelligent. Where are you from, Chris? Where do you live?
I live in Canada.
Cool. I've never had Aquavit, so I would like to try that one day.
It is commonly flavored with caraway, cardamom, cumin, anise, fennel, and lemon or orange peel. Sometimes also dill or grains of paradise. Fun fact, we don't have grains of paradise down there.
People in colonial America had to work hard to make a living. Without the labor-saving machines we enjoy today, they had to meet many of their needs for food, clothing, and shelter through their own effort. All family members worked together to carry out this work. Many times, an extended family would live together in one house on one plot of land. Parents, children, aunts, uncles, cousins, and grandparents all contributed to daily chores. At home, men and women worked hard, but their responsibilities were usually different. Women took care of the house and the land immediately around it. Cooking and cleaning were time-consuming tasks, and they had to do all that work by hand. Along with handling these household chores, farm wives often helped their husbands. At busy times, like planting and harvesting, they helped in the fields. Men headed their households, and they spent most of their time working. They took responsibility for running the farms and did the planting, plowing, and gathering of crops. They also built their homes and hunted animals for food. Children helped at home too. Young children had tasks like gathering wood and water. Older girls helped their mothers with the household work. Older boys helped their fathers in the fields. Colonial America had 3 social groups or classes. Most people belonged to the middle class. They owned farms or businesses. The small upper class or gentry included wealthy farmers, government officials, and lawyers. At the bottom were indentured servants and enslaved Africans. Indentured servants received passage to America on a ship. In return, they agreed to work for a specific period of time for the person who paid for their passage. Once that period was finished, they received land, tools, and other supplies to help them start their own farms. In 1619, the leaders of Virginia gave free white males the right to vote for representatives they called burgesses. This was the first representative assembly in the colonies. Other colonies created similar governing bodies. But Britain also passed laws that affected the colonies. Britain would gain financially if the colonies were successful. To ensure this success, Britain passed trade laws that taxed all goods imported to or exported from the colonies. Colonists were part of a triangular trade network. Shippers carried goods from Europe to West Africa, where they were traded for slaves. They took the slaves to the Americas. The people were traded for sugar and other goods. These were carried back to Europe. Most people who bought Africans owned plantations. The Africans tended the crops grown on these large farms and did other work in the plantation house and the fields. Considered property, the Africans had no freedoms. Life in the colonies could be harsh. Farmers faced bad weather, drought, disease, and the fear of the unknown. But the brave people who first settled in North America would soon create a new nation.
So, the Public Universal Friend was the 8th child of a 3rd-generation American Quaker family, and they all attended services with the Society of Friends, which is basically like the name of the Quakers. So, in their early life, the Public Universal Friend had black hair and eyes and was always very strong and athletic. They were an adept horse rider and an avid reader. By the mid-1770s, they began attending meetings with the New Light Baptists and stopped doing Quaker stuff. After a while, they started feeling unsatisfied with both sects, and this time was very stressful. Them and a few of their siblings were basically like ousted out of the Quakers. So in October of 1776, the Public Universal Friend contracted a disease, which was probably typhus, and was bedridden and near death with a super high fever.
Typhus is a bacteria you mainly get from fleas, meaning wild animals and even your pet can put you at risk. Symptoms of typhus are abdominal pain, backache, diarrhea, red rash in your midsection, high fever, and vomiting. Lice and ticks are carriers, but fleas are the biggest threat. And if you're an outdoor person who likes to hike, wearing socks and shoes, pants, and long sleeves, adding insect repellent on your body and or clothes will help keep you safe. Doctors say the disease cannot be transmitted human to human.
Their family was super worried, and them and their neighbors set up a death watch. Like, it was literally like that serious. After a few days, the fever finally broke. The public universal friend claimed to have died and reported receiving revelations from God through two archangels who proclaimed, quote, "Room, room, room in the many mansions of eternal glory for thee and everyone." The angels also said that the friend's soul had ascended to heaven and that the body had been reanimated with a new spirit charged by God with preaching his word. That of the public universal friend, describing that name in the words of Isaiah 62:2 as a new name which the mouth of the Lord hath named. After this, the friend refused to respond to their given name and ignored or basically yelled at people who still used it. The friend identified as neither male nor female and asked to not be referred to with gendered pronouns. Their followers respected this and referred to them as the universal public friend or the friend. Other followers even used gender-neutral pronouns in their private diaries, which is very fucking cool considering it was like the 1700s. The friend dressed either pretty androgynously or more masculine, which again is super fucking cool given the time that they were in. The friend started traveling and preaching around Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania with their brother Stephen and sisters Deborah, Elizabeth, Marcy, and Patience, all of whom had also been disowned by the Quakers.
What kind of, so they were disavowed by the Quakers, but were they still like preaching the Quaker religion? Just as kind of like their own little separate like group?
But what the friend preaches is basically Quakery stuff, but like a little bit different. I'll get into that in a minute.
The Religious Society of Friends was nicknamed the Quakers because they were thought to quake or tremble at the name of the Lord. The Quakers deeply offended the English religious authorities and Puritans in the New World as well.
And the Quakers believed in direct revelation. That is, they believed that every Quaker had the Spirit of God dwelling within him or her and therefore could be in direct contact with the Spirit without going through priests or bishops.
They had such disdain for the Church of England, they refused to pay taxes to support it. They refused to serve in the military and also to remove their signature broad-brimmed hats in the presence of English noblemen. Quakers built simple, one-room meeting houses. There, the Society of Friends sought to find divinity or inner light within themselves. They believed that regardless of race, age, or gender, all were equal in the eyes of God.
They continued to be very frightening to people like the Puritans who saw the claim of direct revelation as completely unacceptable.
Early on, the public universal friend preached that people needed to repent their sins in order to be saved from judgment, but they didn't bring a Bible to worship meetings and instead recited long sections of scripture, like totally from memory. Like, they were real fucking smart. The meetings attracted big crowds and then eventually formed an actual congregation, which was called the Universal Friends. So this made the friend the first, in quotations, native-born American to found a religious community. Like, obviously, the indigenous people were there first. This is the first, like, whitey to start a religious community.
Westernized religion brought over?
Yeah. So lots of the followers were from Quaker backgrounds. Even the actual Quakers had super blacklisted the Universal Friends because of the pride and ambition to distinguish themselves from the rest of mankind. So lots of like ex-Quakers kind of found themselves drawn in by Universal Friends. So the Universal Friends were covered in papers and pamphlets by the mid-1780s. Unfortunately, most papers focused on the preacher's ambiguous gender and on the sermons or in theology, which was, like I said, like super familiar to the Quakers.
So kind of like tabloids at the time would focus just on that instead of like what they were actually trying to teach.
Right. They were like, ooh, who is this mysterious person? So the public universal friend rejected the ideas of predestination. They held that anyone, regardless of gender, could gain access to God's light, and that God spoke directly to individuals who had free will to choose how to act, and believed in the possibility of universal salvation. So keep in mind, this is like the 1780s. These are all pretty progressive ideas.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So like the Quakers, the Friend called for the abolition of slavery and even persuaded followers who held people in slavery to free them. Several members of the congregation were actually Black folks in the 1780s. Yeah, they were pretty progressive.
I just want to point out that the Quaker logo symbol looks a lot like something that I would assume like an ANCOM, like an anarchist type person would use. It's like a red 4-pointed star with a black 4-pointed star on top of it. It's kind of metal.
Love it.
Oh, so yeah, that is pretty metal.
Right? Like, it's super cool. I love it. The Friend preached humility and hospitality towards everyone, kept religious meetings open to the public, and housed and fed visitors, including people who were from out of country, and also the indigenous folks, which they generally had a pretty good relationship with, which is kind of cool. So the Friend preached sexual abstinence and wasn't a huge fan of marriage, but did not see celibacy as mandatory and accepted marriage, especially because it was better than sex out of wedlock. Friend also thought that women should, in quotations, obey God rather than man, and even had a group of unmarried ladies called the Faithful Sisterhood, who took leading roles most often given to men.
That's interesting, because that's kind of subverting the structure of a lot of like fundamentalist religions, because a lot of fundamentalist religions, especially ones that still have like patriarchal overtones, are, you know, the children, then the wife, then the husband, then God. That's the way the power structure goes. But it sounds like the Friend, like they thought that they should deserve a direct line to God as well.
Yep, exactly. Which is pretty fucking cool. Like, as you all know, like I'm an atheist, but that's really fucking metal. I love that. By the mid 1780s, the Universal Friends, which is the group, started to kind of plan a town for themselves in Western New York. Eventually got everything together, but by 1791, they had some problems with titles, and it never actually 100% worked out. In 1799, some former followers tried to arrest the Friend for blasphemy, but some academics and folks think that it was actually motivated by disagreements over land and power. Some arrest attempts were made, and the Friend eventually appeared in front of a judge in court. The court ruled that no indictable offense had been committed, and the judge even invited the Friend to give a sermon to the people in attendance. Just kind of fucking neat.
Wow, that was unexpected.
I know, right? Universal Friend story is pretty positive for a Sage episode.
Let me be clear here. When you said public universal friend, I thought this was going to be something like the Unification Church, where it just sounds like, oh, that's probably some culty thing. It's like, oh no, it's actually like a trans feminist sect of some religion. Cool, I'm down.
I know, basically like a trans idol. How fucking cool is that?
I don't know if we have any friends down in hell. I wouldn't think so.
Oh. So, unfortunately, the public universal Friend's health had been declining since the turn of the century. By 1816, the preacher had begun to suffer from a very painful edema, which is like swelling and fluid and all sorts of gross things. But still, they continued to receive visitors and give sermons. A Friend died on the 1st of July, 1819, and was buried in an unmarked grave per their wishes. Eventually, because the Universal Friend had unfortunately passed away, the Universal Friends basically vanished by the 1860s. Lots of people talked a lot of shit about the Universal Friend and were like, oh no, they were just a lady that was being a big fucking scammer. But it's generally pretty accepted that the Universal Friend was literally just like a fucking cool trans person.
I don't know.
Or non-binary person, yeah.
I'm not swayed by those kind of arguments today, and I'm not swayed by them back then. Like, there's still people today that are like, whatever you think about certain trans celebrities, like people saying that they're faking it for clout and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like,
there was tons of those rumors swirling around that they were faking it for clout, basically.
Yeah, like the amount of discrimination and like daily abuse that they go through, especially as public figures coming out as trans or coming out as non-binary, like Christ, like nobody would willingly subject themselves to that.
Especially in the 1700s, and like the Public Universal Friend, like if anyone tried to call them like their dead name, they're basically like, who's that? I don't know who that is. I don't know who the fuck you're talking to. Call me by what I told you to call you. And that's pretty fucking rad, I think.
Well, look at Elliot Page.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
There was like a 50-50 shot. Every article written about him like dead named him, and like
I know that was really.
Even today, that bad habit continues.
Let's be fair here. Caitlyn Jenner might be going to hell, but not for being trans. For all the other things.
No, Caitlyn Jenner is a terrible person, but she's still a woman.
Yeah, and just to drive the point extra home, if you choose to misgender or dead name somebody because you disagree with their opinions, you're not in fact attacking their opinions. You're attacking them at like their identity, which is not something I think a moral person should do.
Fun fact, we use gender neutral pronouns in hell because we're demons, not monsters.
Love that. Oh, that's nice. That's why I did not like pretty much every article I read about the friend had their dead name, and I was like, no, I'm not fucking putting that in there. If you really, really, really need to know it, you can go look it up, but I'm not. They wanted to be called the Universal Public Friend, and that's what I will call them.
The only important thing about like the original names is that the friend's mother's initial maiden name is Whipple, which sounds like nipple. That is all.
Yes. That I also struggled with putting that in there, and I was like, no. I'm sure that someone else will make the Whipple nipple joke. All right, well, that was my episode. I'm sorry if it was short. But my name is Sage Murray, and I'm joined by
Richard Bigley,
Ood Gallifrey,
the soundboard demon,
and Chris, who has not missed his cue this time.
All right, well, love you, bye.
Bye-bye. Have a wonderful night. Playing us out this episode, released in 1921, Ain't We Got Fun, from Van and Schenck. Enjoy, and see you in the after show.
Bill collectors gather round and rather on the parties next door. Men the grocer and the butcher spend, men who call for the rent. But within a happy Daffy and his bride of only a year, seem to be so cheerful, here's an earful of the chatter you hear. Every morning, every evening, ain't we got fun? Not much money, oh but honey, ain't we got fun? The rent unpaid, dear, we haven't a fuss, but smiles are made, dear, for people like us. In the winter, in the summer, don't we have fun? Times are bum and getting bummer, still we have fun. There's nothing surer, the rich get rich and the poor get children. In the meantime, in between time, ain't we got fun? Just to make their trouble nearly double, something happened last night. To the journey a brave bird came, Mr. Stalk is his name. And I'll bet 2 pins a pair of twins just happened into the bird. Still they're very gay and merry, just that groaning I heard. Every morning, every evening, don't we have fun? Twins and pairs, dear, come in pairs, dear, don't we have fun? We've only started as Mama and Pop. Are we downhearted? I'll say that we're not. Landlord's mad and getting madder. Ain't we got fun? Times are bad and getting badder. Will we have fun? There's nothing surer. The rich get rich and the poor get laid off. In the meantime, in between time, ain't we got fun?
I encourage you to look into media yourself about the Public Universal Friend. Read more about their life, their accomplishments, and how they subverted a lot of the norms that surrounded them. Something that the patrons mentioned that I think is important to emphasize at the end of this story is a lot of history is interpretive. Like, history isn't an exact science. It isn't measuring the graviton force or measuring the newtons of force or something at the end of a math equation. It's an interpretation of people. It's reading people writing down what they saw, and those people may have had biases. History is a story that we tell each other based on what other people have written down, and we have to hope those people are being accurate, and we can check that by checking historical records and artifacts and other writings, but at the end of the day, bias may affect how history is told and recorded. And that is especially true with the history of trans people. A lot of times their history is either monopolized by their gender expression, and their accomplishments are downplayed, or their gender expression is ignored, and they are misgendered and disrespected consistently in their life and in history told afterwards. This is a reality for trans people in history and trans people today still going through the same struggles. It's a reminder that we still have a long ways to go. Public Universal Friend wanted to be accepted in their age, and so do trans people today, and we all need to work to make that reality come true. Education, influence, empathy, all that good stuff. Anyways, those are the thoughts that I'm comfortable attaching to this subject. I think it adds some points that are needed, and, that's the end of the episode this week. Thank you for tuning in to Occultae Veritatis. I've been Ood Gallifrey. I know I harp on this a lot, but please remember to keep on doing things that specialists and doctors recommend to keep you safe from COVID. Even if the line is going down in your area and cases are going down, keep on putting effort in. Keep on following guidelines. This is a social effort if we're going to beat this thing. Have a wonderful night. Stay safe.